Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Nicholas Bird. This evening, we warmly welcome Wing Commander Bob Howe, retired, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Please feel free to be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest, wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flying Officer Donald Charles Gundry. Donald Gundry was born on the 26th of December 1916 in Toowoomba, Queensland, to Harris and Ethel Gundry. Growing up, he had two brothers, Leslie and Harry, but Leslie died in 1921, aged only 12. Their father was a contractor. Donald was educated at Toowoomba Boys Grammar School and Queensland University. He was a keen cricket player in the A grade. After leaving school, he worked as a costing clerk. On the 23rd of March 1940, Gundry married Ketta Burge, and in December they had a daughter, Jennifer. The family settled in Adelaide. On the 18th of July 1942, Gundry enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force, aged 25. Despite not having his left ring finger, he trained as a pilot, and in early May 1943, he was made sergeant and received his wings. Gundry embarked for overseas service from Sydney on the 25th of May 1943, arriving in the UK in July. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners and flight engineers who joined Australian and British squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. After further specialist training, in November Gundry was promoted to Flight Sergeant. The following February, he was commissioned as a pilot officer, and on the 12th of July 1944, he was made Flying Officer and posted to number 463 Squadron RAF. As part of Bomber Command, the squadron flew the four-engined Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. On the 25th of July 1944, Bomber Command launched a daylight bombing raid on the airfield and signals manufacturing depot at Saint-Cyr near Paris. Flying Officer Donald Gundry was the pilot of Lancaster Juliet Oscar Foxtrot, which took off from the Royal Air Force Base at Waddington just before 6 p.m. On the way to the target, Gundry's aircraft was hit by anti-aircraft fire, but managed to drop its bombs before the engine was hit and caught fire. The crew's attempts to quench the flames in the starboard engine inside the aircraft's bomb bay were unsuccessful. Gundry ordered the crew to bail out. Witnesses in the French village of Chaussy, more than 50 kilometres northwest of Saint-Cyr, saw 5 crew members parachute out of the plane before it crashed just outside the village. 3 of the men were taken prisoner by the Germans, while 2 were wounded and sent to hospital in Paris. Flying Officer Donald Charles Gundry and his wireless operator and fellow Australian, Flight Sergeant Vernon Schelt, were not among them, and an investigation later determined that both had been killed in the crash. Their remains were removed from the wreckage and Gundry was buried together with Schelt at the Omerville Cemetery. Donald Gundry rests there under the inscription, "Greater love hath no man than this, ever remembered." He was 27 years old. Gundry's brother Harry also enlisted in the Second World War, serving with the 25th Battalion. He survived the war and returned home safely. Flying Officer Donald Gundry's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, along with some 40,000 other Australians from the Second World War. A photograph of Flying Officer Donald Gundry alongside fellow RAF servicemen is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Donald Charles Gundry, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.